morning, and of course the smiles are bright on this Katiba Day. Anne is back. Karibu sana. We had missed you here at Morning Cafe.
I missed you too. I wanted to say I'm so happy to be back, but I'm happy to see you, so that's all I'll say.
Okay. My name is Fred Indimuli. Today is Katiba Day, August 27th, exactly 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution 2010. We'll be looking at that, and that will form the biggest chunk of our discussions this morning. It is also 120 days to Christmas.
Wonderful.
How about that?
Wonderful. The countdown is almost done. But speaking of devolution, it promised three main points: checks on power, devolution, and of course, freedom of a couple of rights thereabout. So we'll be having a broader panel here that will extend all the way to 9 a.m. to talk about where the gaps and what needs to be sealed in regards to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, 15 years in.
All right, and that's exactly what the dailies are talking about. And we start off with the Daily Nation today, 15 years of promise and hope.
Taifa leo, ndoa ya mahasimu.
Scandalous. That's a one-word headline on the front page of the Standard. We'll be telling you more about that.
People Daily, Ruto policies killing dreams.
The Star, why reality check awaits rebel MPs in Raila Ruto camps. And you can see most of the papers, it's like they've ignored Katiba Day. It's only the Daily Nation that has it on the front page. Business Daily.
Flour tycoons buy Savannah Cement in a 3.8 billion shillings deal.
All right. So for that discussion, we'll be having this advocates of the High Court, Ishmael Nyaribo, Kibe Mungai, and Harrison Kinyanjui, just taking stock of the 15 years of the Constitution 2010. That will be coming your way at 6:30. All the way to 8 a.m. After that,
Still that, an extension of that interview from 6:30. We'll be having Hans Rop, a political analyst. Josephat Kamanyi is also a political analyst. Joy Minor and Faith Mateyan, youth advocates.
Away from matters Constitution, and even before we take a look at the regional dailies, we'll be taking a look. Today is a very interesting day because hata kama tulipigwa tukatolewa kwa hiyo tournaments, the trophy, the Chan Trophy will be, continues on its media tour. It will be here at TV47 today at 1 p.m. And Fred Arocho and Tony Kwalanda will be hosting Victor Wanyama and Mrisho Ngasa. Ule mtu ajui Victor Wanyama siwezi kuambia, siwezi kukusaidia, I am sorry. Sasa utajua hata Mrisho Ngasa ni nani. 1 p.m. you should be watching TV47 for this. Remember the semi-finals were played? Yes. Sasa tunangoja final.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Let's come back and take a look at what's big regionally. And we start off today tuanze na New Vision. Na ni kama inataka kuniletea ile maneno. Kule Uganda. So NRM Party League winners and losers. Remember the NRM Party, chama tawala kule Uganda, wanaendelea na ile wanaita National Delegates Conference. They are doing internal elections to try and get their special leaders therein as they prepare for the elections come January. So special interest group elections see surprise victories. Na kuna wale wanalia huko, women leaders, wengine wameshinda. Leo hii space inakuanga reserved for president. It has other people today. Meanwhile, in court, Besigye, Lutale, in third bail bid, they are still behind bars months to election day. So the big discussion, NRM in Uganda.
Daily Monitor, still in Uganda, why NRM polls are do or die. Showdown, more than 23,000 NRM party delegates assemble for the national conference at the Kololo ceremonial grounds today. At face value, the CEC elections seem ordinary party polls, but in reality are a do or die political battles and a getaway to influence power and by extension money as well. On the front page here, we see First Deputy Prime Minister Rebecca Kadaga at the NRM party headquarters in Kampala, because during the nomination to contest for the second national vice chairperson female position. Still in Uganda, Nakivubo channel among blocks, Kosasi probe of Hamdale, Besigye instructs lawyers to boycott Judge Baguma, and terror attack survivors seek justice.
So matters NRM still big news in Uganda. Let's cross over to take a look at Tanzania, which is only months, now exactly 2 months away to the October 29th elections. Tunaanza na gazeti la Mwananchi wasema msajili amkalia kooni Mpina, asema kisheria uteuzi wake ni batili, hastahili kuwa mgombea urais. Ni baada ya Mona Lisa kupinga uteuzi wa Mpina, ACT akimbilia mahakamani. Registrar amesema huyo Mpina hana haki ya kuwania urais. Kwingine, Samia afunguka pangua ya Amos Makala na makato mafao ya wafanyakazi kuibua mapya. Mkwamo wa katiba mpya na vilio vya wanasiasa. Unakumbuka yule Tundu Lissu, wale wa no reforms no election, hiyo kitu iliisha, ilinyamaza. Na pale juu, ushirikiano wa wadau chachu ya maendeleo. Habari za kisiasa hivi zapewa kipaumbele kule, chama cha ACT na mgombea wake wa kiti cha urais wakipata habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hilo.
Still in Tanzania, the citizen campaigns whether Dar historic venues. It's a question they're asking here. And as Tanzania edges closer to the 2025 general election, questions are emerging about the fate of Dar es Salaam's once iconic campaign grounds, which for decades provided the stage for the country's most memorable political rallies. Mwembe Yanga grounds is here. The story is on page 2. Jangwani was not alone in shaping Tanzania's political theatre. Mwembe Yanga grounds in Temeke district once stood as another vast open space capable of hosting tens of thousands. The grounds have been transformed into a modern sports and recreation complex.
Yes, in the Kenyan version, this would be the equivalent of Kamukunji grounds and maybe Uhuru Park kidogo. Yeah.
All right, digital inclusion partnerships key to brighter future, and Planning and Investment Minister Kitila Mkumbo has stressed the need to empower citizens of Tanzania through digital access while fostering strong partnerships with the private sector. That story is on Jangwani. Of course, this has been given a lot of coverage here on the front page of the Citizen. How parties are embracing tech ahead of election is another story on page 3. And on the top strip, wanted 1.8 billion shillings to drive clean cooking shift nationwide. This is Tanzania.
All right. So these are regional dailies, mostly political in both Tanzania and Uganda. In Kenya, we're just talking about Katiba and other politics as well. But before that, let's take a look at the weather situation. Today is a bit warmer in the morning. Yes. In most areas, and we start off in at the coast. Now, imeenda Lake Victoria.
Yes, this is Kisumu.
Kisumu. So 18 degrees in Kisumu and promises to be a very hot day there. Highs of 28 degrees, and you can see partly cloudy with clear skies for the better part of the day, giving rise to some showers later in the evening from 5 p.m. Kidogo to 1.8 millimeters, but mostly a sunny day in Kisumu today.
Mombasa is 23 degrees this morning, feels like 25, highs of 27 degrees. Precipitation in Mombasa, 1.8 millimeters. They say it's a partly cloudy day in Mombasa.
Ni kama tu Mombasa na Kisumu zimekaribiana in terms of the weather. Isiolo, another warm area, 18 degrees as we speak, but feels warmer at 23. Clear with periodic clouds, highs of 30 degrees Celsius today. Uko sidhani kama kutakuwa na mvua ata. So a very hot day in Isiolo. In the Rift Valley, Nakuru.
It's 13 degrees in Nakuru this morning, feels like it's clear skies. Highs of 25 degrees today, and precipitation here 5.8 millimeters, the highest so far.
Wamewekewa ile laini, ukianika nguo hazitakauka utakaa hivyo. Anasema clear skies, lakini ile mvua iko huko is the highest in Nakuru. What about Nyahururu, which is further up north from Nakuru, 12 degrees Celsius. As we speak, this is the coldest we've seen. Partly cloudy day, highs of 21 degrees. Yes, it is indeed cold there, 22 degrees, the highs. There'll be some rainfall there, 3.4 millimeters, a bit lower than what we saw in Nakuru. So Nakuru and Nyahururu, a bit of rainfall there. What about Nairobi?
Finally, Nairobi, 13 degrees, feels like 14 this morning, a mostly cloudy day. Highs of 24 degrees. And precipitation in Nairobi, 0.2 millimeters, not much rain.
24 is the highest we've seen in like 2 weeks, since you left.
Really?
No, I think since I went to Homa Bay.
No.
Last week we were clocking 19, the highest.
When
20.
you were in Homa Bay, Nairobi was actually quite cold.
It was cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Homa Bay was on the opposite.
Yeah.
Too hot a bit. Yes. So that's the weather situation. A bit mixed. Some areas having rainfall, especially in the Rift Valley and parts of the Mount Kenya region. But Nairobi is cold. No chance of rain. South Coast, kuna mvua. All right. We keep tracking the back to school, with many students still trying to travel back to their schools across the country. And you can see quite a number of roads, especially zile ziko katikati na karibu na mabasi ya kusafirisha wanafunzi, are getting busy. And for the second time this week, we are seeing that Landis Road heading towards town is busy. Usually it's green at this time, meaning that this is one of the busiest areas getting into Haile Selassie Avenue. Haile Selassie Avenue, the entire stretch from Uhuru Highway down to the Landis Road roundabout is also busy. Zile matatu za North Rift ziko around hii area, easy coach, alafu kuja hapa upande zile matunda. Kama unapanda matunda ndo uende shule, hiyo shule yenye iko mbali. Jogoo Road is building up kama kawaida pale Makadara na hiyo stretch ya pale City Stadium roundabout. There's a bit of traffic on Manyanja interchange. You can see red pale, but I'm sure ni matatu zinasumbuana pale. Hopefully that will not impact much on the movement of vehicles. Outer Ring Road, nothing to worry about. A bit of traffic pale Pipeline. Kangundo Road hawajaamka. Yesterday there was a very bad snarl up on Thika Road. And I can see something similar is building up around between, this is Clayworks.
This is Clayworks.
Githurai, 44, that stretch heading towards Kasarani. There's a long stretch of yellow and a
45.
bit of red.
This is 45.
45. Right? So yes, just like yesterday, but yesterday's was even longer and it was red, the entire stretch Mpaka Garden City Mall. But this could impact on traffic, and you can see very little traffic around Pangani interchange because of most of the cars are still up there in Githurai. Yeah. So that's the traffic situation, nothing much to worry about. Ni watoto tu wanarudi shule. After wamerudi shule next week, we go back to normal. The other roads, Wayaki Way, Langata Road, Ngong Road, and Raila Odinga Way, they're all green at this time of day.
All right, let's take a look at the quote of the day.
Belief is a force, and like any other, once you believe something is possible, you've already completed half of the journey. Doubt only serves to hinder your progress.
Yes, Katiba at 15, today being Katiba Day, it is a big story on the front page of the Daily Nation. 15 years of promise and hope. In 2010, Kenya's adopted a new constitution after its overwhelming approval in a referendum, bringing to an end a 2-decade-long struggle for reforms. While progress is evident today, challenges do persist. This is a one story that has been given prominence, acres and acres, pages 4, 5, 6, and 7 of this paper. Just some of the highlights here, hits and misses. On hits, we have devolution, public participation, which I don't think, I think just on paper, public participation. Judicial independence, for the very first time we saw a court actually nullify a presidential election. That was a first. Even dunia iliangalia kusema we jaji ako sawa. Matters Bill of Rights, some of them that have been ignored. Matters misses state repression, yeah, when it comes to Bill of Rights. Compromised parliament, that I agree completely. Corruption, defiance of court orders. So numerous attempts to amend the Supreme Law have failed, with the latest campaign underway with the NADCO process. This paper continues to document the 3-day visit by His Highness the Aga Khan V, and yesterday was at State House, Nairobi, and he's seen there on the front page with President William Ruto, where they signed documents and they're pictured there exchanging these documents. Elsewhere, pale juu, Nairobi MCA's plot to impeach Sakaja and his deputy. That's a new one. Walikuwa wamesema Sakaja ameingiza MCA's box, lakini ni kama
Kitu inaenda mrama.
simu haijalia. Simu haijalia. So Nairobi MCAs are plotting to impeach Sakaja. That story is on page. What are the details?
At least 41 MCAs must sign motion before tabling. Anasema kwamba political storm is in the making at City Hall after members of the Nairobi County Assembly yesterday resolved to initiate impeachment proceedings against Governor Johnson Sakaja and his deputy James Mushiri. This was the culmination of a charge to our meeting at the Assembly, attended by 96 of the 122 MCAs, including Speaker Ken Ngondi and Majority Leader, of course, Peter Mwatok. Emerging from the meeting, several MCAs declared that Mr. Sakaja and his deputy must go, accusing them of being out of touch rather, with Nairobi's challenges.
That is also something to discuss, the way MCAs always hold that governors at ransom. Ile story unaambiwa umekataa kufanya hivi, impeach.
Enda home.
Utaenda nyumbani. Wewe utaenda nyumbani wewe. So is it progress then as far as devolution is concerned? Back page, matters CAF. Yes, Morocco versus Madagascar. That will be the final. Lile trophy tunazungumzia. Madagascar, who beat Kenya in the quarterfinals, managed to beat, who were they playing against jana? Walipiga Sudan.
Sudan ndio walikuwa wamebaki tu, only hope, lakini sasa.
Hata huyo Sudan sio, ingekuwa South Sudan it would have been better.
Really?
Yes, Sudan is further.
After tumetoka, Tanzania wakatoka, Uganda wakatoka. We were just looking at Sudan.
Sudan is not even part of the East African community. But South Sudan though is. So okay. Madagascar walikachapa Sudan. Meanwhile Morocco wakachapa wale wengine wanaitwa nani?
Who?
Morocco walichapa nani?
Walichapa nani?
Nakwambia Kenyans we lost interest in this tournament kabisa. After they left, acha nikwambia, let me just confirm for you. Okay. I don't know why they beat Senegal. Yeah, Morocco beat Senegal. Yani Senegal was in the semi-final and we didn't even bother. But they played in Tanzania. Meanwhile, Madagascar beat Sudan at the Benjamin Mkapa Stadium. Yeah. No, they were the ones in Tanzania. Wale wengine walikuwa Uganda. But they are meeting here on 30th for the finals. Ile kikombe tumeonyesha na itakuwa pa 1 p.m. watakuwa wanang'ang'ania. So who will you be supporting between Morocco and Madagascar?
Morocco.
Why not Madagascar? Sababu walipiga Kenya.
Yes. That's the only reason.
All right, that's the story on the back page. Madagascar into the final. That's the Daily Nation.
Taifa Leo, ndoa ya mahasimu. Hatua ya Rais William Ruto kuwashambulia wabunge kwa madai ya kubobea kwenye ufisadi inaonekana kumponza baada ya bunge na mahakama kuamua kuzika tofauti zao na kufanya kazi kwa pamoja. Idara ya mahakama na bunge, asasi ambazo zinakinzana kwa kila jambo, zaungana kukashifu serikali kuu. Now, legislatures versus executive. Vita iko hapo. Rais William Ruto na Mwadhama Rahim Aga Khan watano katika ikulu ya Nairobi hapo jana, akimtunukia ama akimpa tuzo ya Elder of the Golden Heart hapo jana. Vidokezo zaidi, fidia Ruto atiwa wataalamu 14 ikiwemo rais wa LSK Faith Odhiambo ambaye ni naibu mwenyekiti wa jopo la watu 15 anayeongoza. Hii ni Makao Mutua. Hii
ni ile unaitwaje?
Protest victim compensation.
Okay.
Magavana wakataa agizo la Duale na serikali ilikuwa imetangaza kuwa wahudumu wa UHC wataajiriwa county. UHC staff, honestly, devolution hapo. We'll be asking these questions today. Maelfu ya raia wahama jiji la Gaza wa Palestina jana waliendelea kuondoka Gaza baada ya Israeli kuangusha mabomu. Na kule juu, katiba ilivyofifisha mamlaka ya rais na marais wa zamani Mzee Jomo Kenyatta na Daniel Arap Moi walikuwa na mamlaka yaliyopita kiwango cha kawaida cha utendaji wa serikali. Masala ya sporti, Kindario asitiri Liverpool, Ngumoha 16 afunga bao la ushindi dakika ya akona miaka 16. Okay. Afunga bao la ushindi dakika ya 100 kufuatia pasi ya Sala.
Alright.
Taifa Leo.
Taifa Leo, tuangazie Standard. Anachoma anasema scandalous. Misplaced priorities. So now as Kenyans struggle to put food on the table amid the rising cost of living, the Ruto administration is spending millions of dollars on Washington lobbyists to polish its battered image on Capitol Hill. Tulisema we don't care what happens in the US. Yeah. Now this follows a Republican senator's motion in Congress to reassess Kenya's standing, citing links to Sudanese warlords and a domestic record marked by abductions and killings. The Ruto presidency now appears intent on saving face. That story is on page 4. And they have some of the bits of the contract. This is an engagement agreement between Kenya and these lobbyists. Lakini wamelipwa mamilioni kadhaa ili wasaidie kusave face. And according to the Standard, this is purely scandalous. And it's the only story on the front page of the Standard.
I think 272 million per year of taxpayers' money is going to a US lobbying firm at a time when millions of Kenyans are going hungry.
Now, unajua Standard kitu wamefanya on that story, if you look up chini on page 4, wamesema what 272 million shillings per year can do to improve education sector. Yeah. So ile pesa mnatumia huko ingekuwa inafanya hivi. Yeah. So wanasema when looked at from how much the government spends annually in the education sector, 22.7 million per month might seem negligible. Yet this is the money has potential to do a lot of good in Kenya, starting from offering basic but essential services and afford Kenyan children dignity as they pursue their education. You can read that story on page 4. They juxtapose it with that story on ile wameita scandalous. Ile SHA debate inaendelea, page 2 of the Standard, Ladnan Hospital, stake unclear amid Metro Group claims. Hii story ni kama itaendelea kuchoma. You can read it on page 2. Matters devolution and Matters Constitution at 15 also covered extensively on the Standard, pages 6, 7, and 8. So si ati ni kama wameignore your story, they still have it. And on the back page, Madagascar and not Sudan. It's Madagascar and not Sudan in CHAN final. Madagascar beat Sudan 1-0. Meanwhile, Morocco and Senegal had to go for penalties. Kama ile Kenya tulipelekwa na Madagascar, Morocco wakapita nayo. All right, that's the Standard.
Kenya tulipitwa na?
Tulipigwa na Madagascar kwa penalties.
Morocco wakapita nayo. Yeah.
Wakapita.
All right, I hear you. People Daily. Ruto policies killing dreams. Several flagship laws fronted by President William Ruto's parliamentary allies, once touted as reform milestones, are now triggering widespread public frustration. This is a special feature by this newspaper. It's on page 4, and they say even as government points to improved revenue collection, citizens feel pain of raided pockets, erosion of public trust, and failure of key election promises in the bottom-up economic agenda.
Yes. When laws backfire.
Matiang'i's political gamble and fresh attempts to conquer Mount Kenya. The former Interior CS is quietly testing the waters in the region in his quest to make history as Kenya's 6th head of state. This story is on page 5. Housing levy, why Kenyans are on their own. This story is on page 5. Tuangalia wanasema vipi, why
Pale chini.
mbona we are on our own.
Auditor General amesema
Yes.
hii law ya housing levy does not allow her to audit the affordable housing.
Control of
housing,
budget.
Or control of budget.
Yes.
She cannot audit that levy. So your pesa, however itatumika, it's not under her control. That's why they're saying you're on your own when it comes to housing levy.
All right, that's the People Daily.
All right. The Star, fresh, independent, and different, steers clear of Matters Constitution, talks about other things. Why reality check awaits rebel MPs in Raila Ruto camps. Say they're buoyed by unprecedented clamor for good governance from Gen Z. They have images of some of these politicians ranging from Babu Owino, Caleb Amisi, Edwin Sifuna, Gathoni wa Mushomba na wengineo hapo, kina Anthony Kibagendi. The story is on page 4 and 5. I should think so. Page 4 and 5 of this paper. Reality check. The reality of Kenyan politics could soon hit hard the vibrant youthful leaders threatening to take the old guard. Yeah. The Stars established that this weekend the team will be in Busia County. However, analysts warn that the real politic could soon scatter the group even before the 2027 polls. Can they last as Kenya moja together? Squeezy every Sunday wanaenda church pamoja.
Election iko 2027.
Ni mbali. Other stories on the front page of the Star, game of musical chairs at Ministry of Health as another scam rocks SHA. This is what was big on the front pages yesterday, SHA. Na ile wanapoteza pesa deadly. Agency to audit governor's tenure every 10 years as new bill caps chief officer's number. Na pale juu, big read, corruption turning investors away from Kenya. That's according to a UK envoy. Hata Raymond Omolo anazungumzia CHAN 2024, anasema once a gamble but now model of future continental tournaments. Of course, we'll be hosting AFCON 2027. That will be bigger than CHAN. Yes. Sasa tunajua how it feels.
We will be hosting it, ama we are hoping to host
No, we'll be hosting it. Because we are co-hosting with Tanzania and Uganda just like we've done now.
Okay.
2020. At least now we know we have a stadium. Yeah. You know, previously we didn't have.
Historia, Fred. You know, when they scrapped off NHIF, they say that this SHA was coming to save whatever was happening at Afya House. SHA imesema chonjo. Let me show you.
I can do it better than NHIF.
Acha nikuonyeshe game.
1,000 hospitals, and I'm getting it from the dailies yesterday, more than 1,000 hospitals have actually been created to defraud SHA. And 10 billion shillings is what has been flagged through the system, that these were attempts to defraud the fund of 10 billion shillings, meaning that there could be successful attempts. Kuna ile pesa ilipita. Alafu kuna hospitali ingine huko Elwak.
Yandiwa.
Elwak huko hata sijui wapi. Walipata 55 million 2 months after SHA imekuwa rolled out. Ati sasa wametibu wagonjwa within 2 months. Unakumbuka people were very slow to register for SHA. So how is it that it was rolled out in October and by December a hospital in Elwak had treated patients to an extent that they invoiced SHA 55 million shillings.
And then the CS atake ulize maswali.
Hiyo tunaambia wacha Kenyans wajisomee. Sisi hatusemi kitu.
Business Daily, flour tycoons buy Savannah Cement and 3.8 billion shillings deal, and they say a group of flour mill tycoons and associates of the makers of Super Loaf bread have acquired bankrupt Savannah Cement for 3.8 billion shillings, ending a 2-year search for suitors after KCB and Absa Bank faced the firm in receivership due to some debt amounting to 14.1 billion shillings. Other stories here, Aga Khan the fifth receives highest civilian honor, and President William Ruto conferring Kenya's highest civilian honor, the Chief of the Order of the Golden Heart, on His Highness Prince Rahim Al Hussaini Aga Khan V at State House, Nairobi yesterday. And the award is in recognition of his commitment to the service of Kenyans and humanity at large. That story is on page 8. Other stories here, 400 wealthy Kenyans fall off the dollar and millionaires list. The number of Kenyan dollar millionaires dropped by 400 in the 18 months to June, amid pointers that the rich moved cash abroad amid uncertainty caused by Kenya's slowing economy and last year's deadly youth protest.
Si ati wamekuwa poor, they just moved their money abroad.
Yes. Na wenye wako abroad pia wanaogopa kuleta huko.
Na kuna mtu anataka kuleta pesa Kenya.
Investors wanaogopa. On the ticker, Mbadi expects 97 billion shillings World Bank loan in September.
Another loan, eh? Okay.
The Treasury now expects the World Bank Group to clear a 96.9 billion shillings loan next month after Parliament passed an improved version of a conflict of interest bill. Old Mutual to sell real estate properties, and Treasury floats new 60 billion shillings bonds. They say the government has returned to the market for new borrowing worth 60 billion shillings via 3 reopened Treasury bonds. These are the stories making headlines on the Business Daily today.
All right. Once again, a reminder that the conversation today will be focused on matters Constitution, Katiba at 15, taking stock of the progress, the hits and misses of the Constitution 2010, 15 years after promulgation. We'll be having this notable advocates of the High Court, Ishmael Nyaribo, Kibe Mungai, and Harrison Kinyanjui in studio in a short while. After that, we'll be getting it from the youth as well.
Yes, absolutely. Like we mentioned at the start of the show, it promised 3 major things, of course, freedom and rights, devolution, and checks on power. Have we been able to do that 15 years on? And of course, during the 2010 Constitution, of course, the promulgation, a lot of the young people now are shaping conversations, or still children. So how do we now
Because a 25-year-old now must have been 15. No. Must have been 10. Yeah. Must have been 10 when this was promulgated.
Yeah.
So now any person even who's 30, alikuwa 15.
Bado watoto.
Bado tu watoto. But how do they? Most of these young people did not experience the old constitution. Yeah. So they don't understand it. But do they feel that the Bill of Rights probably is actually? Do they enjoy a wider space? And as far as the rights provided by the constitution is concerned.
So we'll be having Hans Rop, Josephat Kemanye, political analyst and Jerry Miner, as well as Faith Matayan, youth advocates, to have this conversation on Katiba at 15, an extension of, what is it called? State of the Nation.
State of the Nation, yes. But ukitaka kujua ukweli wa mambo, hata ukisoma gazeti, unaenda kwa Katundo, ujue watu wanazungumzia nini. Wachoraji wanajua kusema mambo ambayo wengine hawasemi. Na wachoraji leo wanazungumzia nini. Tunaanza na mchoraji kule Standard. Matters Constitution as well, 2 frames here. One, the promulgation, and we have a caricature of the third president who got the honor of presiding over the promulgation of the Constitution 2010. That's Mwai Kibaki. Now, Wanjiko hapa amepiga makofi sana akipewa hii Constitution. Amepiga makofi. But now, the next frame on implementation, Wewe.
Iko wapi?
Hiyo sufuria ni empty. Alafu politician anaona tu anamwangalia, wewe unataka kuniambia nini? Utadu. All right. So Matters Constitution on the Standards cartoon.
This is People Daily. Still talks about devolution. Katiba iko ndani ya trash. And of course, you're asking, do we really treasure this book, the 2010 Constitution?
Najua nilisikia mahali ati many Christians have very nice looking Bibles, but that they never read.
True.
So Kenyans also have this very beautiful document that we think is an opinion.
Karibu niseme Bible iko soft copy sahi, and Katiba is also soft copy.
Yes, you can access it. Matters Politics on the front page of, on the cartoon on the Daily Nation, but in Constitution to bado. So Constitution still the biggest topic. So we have different leaders here. We start off with Mwai Kibaki hapo anasema done, make Katiba work. Ye kazi yake ilifanyika. He presided over both referendum of 2005 where it did not succeed, and the referendum of 2010 which led to the promulgation of the Constitution now. He was followed by Uhuru Kenyatta, who was among the first to implement this constitution. Anasema, I did implement some of it. Hapa kuna gari ingine, kuna watu watatu. The prime CS pale, anasema, my position violates it. Alafu mwingine, the president anasema, I voted against it. Yes, he actually voted against that constitution. Lakini wameibeba kwa gari. Lakini kuna mwingine hapa anasema, I always work around it. Yeah, Raila Odinga. I like this cartoon. That's a cartoon on the Daily Nation.
Finally, that's Star.
Fresh, independent, different.
Sha. Sha in shambles. That's about it. Sha iko hospitali.
Amechora jamaa pale na ile kofia ya nani. Huyo alikuanga defense kitambo, sasa yako in charge of health.
Sasa ukimuuliza swali anakuambia amua, as a journalist, amua if you want to be. If you want to be a nurse, go be a nurse. You can't be a journalist.
Why do you hold a press conference and don't want questions from journalists? Tume tu statements.
Leon allow me. Leon Lidigi with his worst nightmare.
But you know, you can actually see when someone is rattled. Now when you're rattled, unajua kuna shida mahali. Yeah, just a reminder that we'll be having this special trophy, the Chan Trophy, in our studios at 1 p.m. today with Fred Arocho and Tony Kwalanda. Yes, I know Kenyans washa move on from this, but hii ndio tungeshinda. Kama tungefika hapo, hii ndio tungeshinda. Sasa itakuwa between Morocco and Madagascar this weekend. But Victor Wanyama atakuwa hapa, former Harambee Stars captain, na Mrisho Ngasa wakishughulikia masuala ya Chan 2024 Trophy Tour, na hii ndio inachanganya watu wengi. Inaitwa Chan 2024 because it was to be played last year. But sababu mingi ambazo Kenya pia ilichangia kwa ufupi na urefu, ikabidi ichezwe 1 year later. It was actually, this tournament has been postponed many times. Alafu it would have been very ironical kama Kenya ndo wangeshinda. Na si ndo tumecause the biggest problem.
Last minute.
But the trophy will be here, something to look forward to. Let's take a look at the traffic situation, tuone kama imegeuka kidogo. And you can see the dark red around Haile Selassie Avenue and Landis Road. Areas around Machakos bus station, pale railways, red kila mali red, watoto wanarudi shule, and it's getting very busy, wazazi wakienda kazini as well. We had seen a problem on Thika Road. Cha tuone kama imegeuka. And it's taking some time to load. Ilikuwa hapa Zimmerman, si ndio? Yes, and yes, the problem still persists all the way from Kahawa Wendani stage. It's a long stretch of yellow and dark red all the way mpaka pale Kasarani. Alafu after that it becomes green. But if I told you coming from areas around Kahawa, Garrison, KU, or Ruiru, you might just as well use the bypasses on both sides. Uzunguke. Kama ule jamaa amesema anazunguka Katiba.
Northern bypass is clear.
Northern bypass, even the eastern bypass could actually get you to town much faster as opposed to using Thika Road. But if you're coming from Kasarani, that's okay. Outer Ring Road is good. The only problem in pale Muthaiga interchange, lakini hiyo ni kama kawaida, to be expected. That's the traffic situation this morning. Other roads are not looking so bad today. All right.
All right, interact with us on our socials. 22047 is our SMS line. Send in your feedback. What do you think of Katiba at 15 years? What are the loopholes that you see as devolution served you right in your counties in matters health? Right now, SHA is in shambles. You have the Digital Health Act. Right now, when we're talking about breach of data, what do you think of that? Are your data, do you feel like it's safe? So 22047 is our SMS line on X, TV47 Digital.
And it's a new account, so please go there and follow it.
And follow it. Yes. My handle on X is at @Ann_Dida. Your handle?
Oh, my handle is at Freddy Ndimuli.
And on Facebook, okay.
The hashtag is Morning Cafe.
On Facebook and on YouTube, TV47 Kenya. See you after the break.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth as long as it is strong and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window to the rest of the body.
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
And of course, you at home do take your water.
So the ultimate test is actually you check your urine. Your urine should be clear.
Clear like the water?
Yes. Should be able to see the other side of the urine. If your urine is colored or has changed color, you cannot see the other side, then you have not taken enough water.
Don't forget regular health checkups. Early detection saves lives.
I want the message be, we can prevent cervical cancer. We prevent cervical cancer in several ways. You have young girls and even somebody who's above that age, you can pay at least every 3 years. Somebody should have a pap smear done.
If you are 40, 45, 50, going upwards, once a year, please go see a doctor. Yeah, it's just for normal routine maintenance.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
Welcome back and good morning once again. My name is Fred Indemuli. Today is Katiba Day and we mark 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution 2010. Today we take stock of the hits and misses of this Constitution. In 2010, Kenya has adopted a new Constitution after its overwhelming approval, up to 70% approval at the referendum, bringing to an end a 2-decade-long struggle for reforms. While progress is evident today, challenges persist. On the front page of the Daily Nation, they've broken down the hits and misses. There is, for example, on hits, devolution, public participation, judicial independence, Bill of Rights. I don't know if you see it that way. And as far as misses, state repression, compromised parliament, corruption, defiance of court orders. Today we have a very special panel. Allow me to introduce Wakili Kibe Mungai. Karibu sana. Even as we anticipate your colleagues to arrive. I'm looking at an article that you wrote in 2020, when you were marking 10 years since the promulgation of the Constitution. And you're talking about the Bill of Rights being very progressive, saying it is prudent, however, to sound the caveat that in human rights practice, what matters is not the enumeration of rights per se, but their actualization in real life situations. That was 5 years ago. Yes. 5 years later, has anything improved?
Yes and no, in two ways. Number one is starting in 2023, 2024, we started seeing a situation whereby there is a clawback on civic and political rights that many times you were assuming they were a given, and probably we would not go to an era where the human rights state, as was desired by the makers of the 2010 Constitution, would be under severe threat. And therefore, on account of these, you've had constant resort to a critical right known as right to fair trial and the right to habeas corpus. And this has been brought about by abductions. So that we have had that challenge of abduction and high-handedness by the police. But we have had a very good response by the High Court, particularly in Nairobi, and I commend the judges who sit in the Constitution and Human Rights Division, because there are a number of people whom I know personally who would actually have been killed had it not been for the vigilance by those judges and the High Court. And therefore, in one sense, the Constitution has stood up for people under duress. But also the other issue is that there are social and economic rights. During the time of President Uhuru Kenyatta, you had situations whereby people like pregnant women, the elderly, and the youth had their rights expanded in the sense that when you give education and good capitation, when you give good health rights to many people and in an expanded manner like Linda Jamii, those are rights that are called socio-economic that are in our constitution. But now you are seeing, probably out of economic incompetence, a situation whereby there is rollback. Because if 22,000 for secondary school students was given about 5-6 years ago, you cannot be able to understand how we are now being told it might go to 16 or 14,000 when inflation has gone up. So that we may not be having free primary education and secondary education in years to come. And again, the other bigger troublesome issues is that terrorism charges, they were originally meant for actual terrorists. But you've seen the weaponization of the Anti-Terrorism Act so that people who are just normal political agitators, reformist, political actors being charged under the Anti-Terrorism Act. This is a severe challenge to Kenya's status as a viable constitutional democracy. And of course, you get the situations whereby people like Aden Duale, Oscar Sudi, where a lot of these people are saying that we shall have to get Ruto re-elected by hook or crook, and we may get a 2007 moment. So you get the impression that bad as today's human rights situation is, that it might probably get worse, and this should be worrisome. So I would say, I really hope the Constitution, because both the text, as long as the judges, as I keep saying, they stand tall and their individual and collective conscience is not dead and they want to do their job, I believe it is possible for the Constitution of Kenya to be a safeguard. Finally, I celebrate on this 15th anniversary the fact that we have a new constitution. Many times I ask myself, you have President Ruto as president and you have June 25. Imagine having that scenario under the old constitution. It could have been worrisome. So I am actually happy because it's sometimes in the worst case scenario that you actually see like there is some line of defense that has been offered.
Yet the Constitution is supposed to be our guide in everything. There are those who argue that the political class, simply because they found ways of defying this Constitution without consequence, it has become more like a suggestion or an opinion. 15 years later, aren't we diluting the sanctity of the Constitution just by defying it without consequence?
Yes, the answer is yes. But there are also historical explanations. And I do not think the Kenyan people are entirely innocent about this. There is a sense in which somebody who was writing in the Standard this week, I believe, where he was arguing that the Kenyan voter has trouble electing idiots and thugs over and over again. In my own observation, when you look at Nairobi County and Kiambu County and even Uasin Gishu, those are the counties that are fairly urbanized, like Nairobi is completely urban, and fairly literate people, cosmopolitan. But you have seen, these are also the counties that you have people I call free felons, criminals, drug dealers, and people with real financial scandals elected as governors, political bandits. So what is the explanation that you can give? You can only say that the voter, you also under the 2010 Constitution, where sovereign power was given to the people, must also exercise that power in a responsible manner. But the bigger game changer is actually 2022 election. It is important, and because that's a historical fact, that when Kenyans elected President William Ruto, it is also important to remember that during the 2010 constitutional referendum, he was the leader of the No campaign. And if you go to the newspapers of those particular day, you would see this is a man who had real problems with the 2010 constitution. So that only after 10 years, you know, a constitutional implementation is something like might take a generation. And therefore, at the time that Ruto takes over the presidency, this is about 10 years or less after the promulgation of the new constitution. So you would have expected of him that he is going to complete the implementation of the constitution. And that's where the irony arises, that you cannot be able to expect somebody who did not believe in something to be the implementer. Okay. So that when today you see something like we are rolling back the gains, that increasingly we are trying to make Kenya look more and more like the Kenya of the 1980s, and even worse, it is looking more and more to copy the tactics in Sudan, the tactics of Yoweri Museveni's Uganda. It is for the obvious reason that you cannot be expected to say that you have a modernist constitution, but again you put it in the hands of somebody who never believed in it.
Yes.
It's scandalous.
And there's something you mentioned about the level of civic engagement. It would appear that even the public are not really fully aware of the kind of document they themselves gave themselves when they went for that referendum in 2010. That lack of a proper understanding of the provisions of this constitution has led to a level of civic engagement where Kenyans are not demanding that the sanctity of the document be maintained. Could that be part of the problem, that 15 years later, so many things have just been dropped by the way?
Precisely, but also, of course, it takes time for some of the Kenyans who lived for very many years under the old constitutional order to immediately understand what appertains to the new constitutional order. It's also the important questions of literacy. So you get yourself into a situation whereby you say the older generation, whether they are educated or not, they largely have views that are informed by the practices and interpretations of the old constitutions. For example, and I keep reading and I get very seriously embarrassed, you see even people who are lawyers talking about Parliament has let down people, it should be dissolved. But the president has no power to dissolve Parliament. So that now when even people who are lawyers and educated people get this idea of something that is not provided for in the Constitution, it makes you worry now about the ordinary citizen. You also get the situation whereby the issues of rights awareness. During the time of Uhuru Kenyatta as president, there was considerable hostility to civil organizations. Part of the legacy of this hostility to civil rights organization was that the kind of civic education that could have been carried out was actually not carried out. So that we do not have a situation where compared to the 1990s of people being aware, one of the actual provisions of the Constitution and the possibilities. But to their credit, and I must mention this, you get the situation whereby the younger generations, the Gen Z and the young millennials, seem to have a very good understanding of the Constitution. And this is where you find a disconnect, that the Gen Z, for example, feel very empowered by the current Constitution. You find the older generation, they still have these old fears of the government, so that when the Gen Z see, if we all stood up, we cannot have tyranny in Kenya. The older generations are likely to cow when the tyrant unleashes GSU on them. So that those differences are there, but the good thing is that moving forward, assuming tyranny will not reign for too long in Kenya, there is a chance that you are going to have a generation that has grown under this new constitution and with the right political and civic attitudes towards the governance systems. But those challenges where there is the dichotomy of age groups are going to persist for a while.
Right. Allow me to welcome Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo to this conversation. As we continue marking Katiba Day and just taking stock of the progress that we've made, we're just trying to examine the question on the level of public engagement or civic understanding of the kind of document we have and what it can do for us. And Wakili Kibemugai was talking about the generational gap. Those people who got to experience the older constitution and the challenges therein, as opposed to the new generation, which is more awakened. And I don't know if you agree that now there appears to be more hope with the younger generation who are about, any 25-year-old now must have been 15 years old when this constitution was promulgated. Does it mean therefore going forward that now we will have a better interaction with this document?
Yeah, thank you, Fred, for welcoming me. I think that I just found my colleague discussing that, Gen Z and those of us who were engaging the state in the old constitution. I think the Gen Z should also, to some extent, in their honest logic, forgive us, or rather tolerate us, who come from, because we have lived in two constitutions. They have only lived in one constitution that is extremely progressive. In fact, a document praised by many professionals and constitutional experts as one of the most progressive. And of course, even if it's progressive, it has its own gaps. But having said that, it is true that for those of us who knew only Kenyatta and Moi, and we find it also even like strange and sometimes shocking that you can stand up to the president and you insult him, caricatures, and draw, and say what you want freely. And that is where we are going. It would be impossible, by the way, for any president for that matter, not just William Ruto, to try to, my colleague is talking about hoping that the terror that has visited our country will not persist for long. It is impossible. Even if that were to be brought by Rao himself, by being with William Ruto in the same, broad-based whatever, it is impossible to return Kenyans back to where we were. You know why? Because those of us who are older are getting older and weak. And those ones who are being born today in the name of millennials and Gen Z, they are coming up into this space under this constitution. So even when you actually start mentioning Kenyatta, Moi, they think that you're actually wasting your time and you are not being realistic. What are you talking about? There was a history that was like this. Okay, fine, that's okay. But so why are you saying it? So that we stop enjoying our fruits or what? So it is impossible. And by the way, when you look at the body language of the president, he has realized that. Even after he welcomed Raila Odinga to his broad-based government, so to say, he has realized that it is still not convincing Kenyans. Even that aspect of Raila having their wherewithal to be the only politician who pulls the crowd, that, as you can see, is also going away because, the emerging generation of leaders who are younger are really embracing the benefits that you get in the constitution.
And the reason why I asked this question is because it would appear, especially to the political class, they found ways of dodging this. One of the cartoons talks about Raila Odinga declaring that he always finds a way around the constitution, that they found a way of defying sections of the constitution without much consequence. So that's the issue.
Fred, and I am sure my colleague will agree on this, sweating takes a time before it really clears, All these shenanigans you see around broad-based government, so to say, today, you can see how Sifuna has pulled out, and he has been consistent on that. And now they are forming something, Kenya Moja Alliance, okay? This younger generation will not give the older generation time to gerrymander the constitution. That has been happening. It's like a sweat. It will be on our body for some time, but it has to disappear.
15 years is not enough time?
I think that for Kenya, actually, we have tried, Fred, if you ask me. Look at Tanzania. You can't speak, nothing. People will just pick you in the morning, take you where they want, and nobody will talk about it. In Kenya, you will pick somebody in the morning, and everybody will be shouting in the evening. Look at Uganda. They are comfortable the way they are. So, yeah, I think 15 years, it's probably, we can say, 50.5% we have tried.
Okay.
And we are still progressing.
Yet there must be very serious challenges even within the document itself that have made it possible for especially the political class to defy the same document because many of them are just looking at this as some sections of it as opinions really. For example, the delimitation of boundaries. No one seems to care what will happen. What is the weakness in this document, and is there a possibility of fixing them going forward?
Yes, that is a good question. But in answering it, the first thing you need to reckon with is that one cannot really, for the time being, until you have honestly implemented the Constitution, say that there is a design problem or a structural problem with the Constitution. Mm-hmm. What, on the other hand, appears to be the case would be there was a certain constitutional theory under which the Constitution was supposed to operate. One of it, for example, we had a problem of imperial presidency. And you see where, both in law and in fact, the president was a tyrant and a dictator under the law, elected dictator, so to speak. So the Constitution was supposed to address that problem. It was addressed in various ways. One, we shall elect him in a manner that is all embracing. All the votes of everybody in the counties would matter. Secondly, you severed the executive from parliament so that you would give the independence to parliament. You strengthen the judiciary to ensure that the judges, starting with the chief justice and the deputy, will not be what are called proteges or personal friends, as it were, of the president of the day. Now, starting with the weakest issue that happened there would actually be the parliament. Parliament has been captured. Mm-hmm. The Constitution says that parliament will do two things. It has exclusive authority to make laws. Number two, it is the main body that is supposed to dispense resources and to defend the Constitution and the interests of the people. But what have we seen with what we call the capture of parliament? You've seen situations whereby in lawmaking, they do not really make the law. The laws are made at State House and they just vote like.
Is that a design weakness?
It's not a design weakness. You can only say it is like where they say, Fred, you are going to allocate resources, decide this. The law says you will do it. But we see you going to State House to say, bring maendeleo to me. You can't call that a design weakness. You can only say it is a problem with parliament. Mm-hmm. And this problem with parliament, as we talk about it, it is also to the leadership that goes with parliament. I've severally said both speakers are people that I call both moral cowards and people who appears to be sycophants of the president of the day. This is not something that was designed so that if parliament, the text of the Constitution, expected parliament to play a certain role and it is not playing, you can say it is a personnel problem more than a design problem. Because when it comes to the judiciary, Martha Koome and the judiciary generally, they have tried to assert their independence and autonomy as an independent arm of government. This has not been there with parliament, so that when the most important arm of government politically and legally is actually parliament. When they abdicate duty and they decide to play second fiddle to the executive, these are the consequences you would see. So that you cannot cure by changing the Constitution. The cure is a change of personnel. The second related point would be offices like the DPP and Attorney General. You would expect a situation whereby there is a happy day, for example, on these issues of Albert Ojwang, where the Attorney General can be able to stand up for public interest, the DPP can stand up for public interest. But what is it that we are seeing? More and more, you see what appears to be a return of Bernard Chunga as the model of the DPP of the day. More and more, You do not see a situation whereby you would say an attorney general who can truly stand up for public interest. So all these problems, therefore, you can be able to say, they look like personnel more than
the argument
the Constitution.
The argument then was that we have a document now, yes, it will not matter the personality, whoever becomes president, this document will be able to rein them in. And that's a challenge we have. But let's take a break.
Let me say something.
Let's take a short break.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll continue with that.
Okay.
You're watching Morning Cafe, today being Katiba Day.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth as long as it is strong and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window to the rest of the body.
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
And of course, you at home do take your water.
So the ultimate test is actually you check your urine. Your urine should be clear.
Clear like the water?
Yes. Should be able to see the other side of the urine. If your urine is colored or has changed color, you cannot see the other side, then you have not taken enough water.
Don't forget regular health checkups. Early detection saves lives.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe, today being 27th of August 2025, 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution, and that's Katiba Day. Just a look at and taking stock of what has happened in the last 15 years, where we are and where we hope to be. Now, just before I continue the discussion, allow me to welcome to the panel Harrison Kinyanjui, Advocate of the High Court. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
We're just examining generally this Constitution 15 years on. And Bwana Kibe, you were still talking about how personalities have managed to do other things. But the question is, back then, the idea was to have a document which would ensure that no matter who deals with it, it will remain the same.
And in many ways, the Constitution of Kenya has been able, we remember 15 years from when you look at the 1963 document, it had been changed and dismembered considerably. This one is largely the way it was in 2010. So to that extent, you can be able to say that adequate checks were put into the Constitution to ensure that you are going to have the structural arrangements of the document to stand the test of time. But of course, the other issue is that a constitution is not self-executing. It requires human agency. And human agency here, you are talking about what you call state officials. It matters who is the DPP, who is president, who is chief justice, and who are the judges. Because ultimately, for example, if someone is abducted, it will depend whether you would find one of these judges very conscious of human rights, or those who don't care much about human rights. The fate of such a citizen of Kenya depends on that issue. That's a human agent. On the issues of fair prosecutions, it depends on the lawyer, because we are lawyers first before you are a judge, who is actually going to be appointed as DPP. And this is historically true. In the Weimar Constitution of the 1920s Germany was by and large a very progressive constitution. But politically, Germany lost it when a political bandit in the name of Adolf Hitler was actually able to ascend to power. He ended up burning the Reichstag, their parliament.
Was he a bandit? Was he a bandit?
You will go by, in the sense that he was, for practical purposes, a gangster and a criminal.
Was he?
From the perspective of any democracy and the value system that went with it. And therefore, is our worst case of scenario example. The current strain that you are seeing, where a lot of constitutional offices are occupied by people who are not truly qualified under Chapter 6 of the Constitution, has also a lot to do with who is President of Kenya currently. So that we need to disabuse ourselves. And that is why we were saying that choices have consequences. Yes. If you arrest somebody, if you elect somebody who believes in the Constitution and can implement it in a fair way, you have a better chance of upholding a democracy.
But talking about constitutional order, and Kili Kinyanjui, this is where you come in. The ideal is that as long as the Constitution stands, everyone will abide by it. It is the main guide. And even in jurisdictions where heads of state have gone rogue, they do so after suspending the Constitution. But in the Kenyan sense, we are saying that we continue to defy the document, but it still stands 15 years on. And that is a confusion I'm getting here. What happens when you can just defy the Constitution with no consequence?
It's very sad. Thank you very much. I would like to agree with my learned friend, Mr. Kibe, about the drivers, they who control, they who are at the apex of whatever institution that you have that is supposed to be governed and ruled by the Constitution. By and large, you see this systemic, and I emphasize systemic failure, which is designed, just like Mr. Kibe has said, in order for they who are in charge or in control to derive whatever it is, political control, economic exploitation, entrenchment or hegemony. Now, in Africa, we have today an exemplary person in the name of Ibrahim Traore. Now, he is said to be tainted by the coup sort of ascendancy into power, but he's yielding the results for his people. So outside the so-called democracy or democratic governance, Ibrahim Traore, he's actually delivering to his people. The GDP was about 18 million US dollars before he took over. As of now, 2 years down the line, it's 22 million US dollars. Oh, sorry, billion US dollars, excuse me. What is he doing for his people that the democratic so-called leader who was elected there before was not doing? Traore has been able to entrench, defend, and protect patriotism. When you look at Article 10, 2A of the Constitution, the very first principle and value that we have is patriotism. We have a president in this country who's not patriotic. 15 years down the line, we do not even have a Kiswahili constitution. What a shame. But 15 years down the line.
Would Traore be the best example to use here? Because just by the nature of him getting into office, he had to suspend the constitution. That's why he enjoys that latitude, that he has to do whatever he wishes.
But then we have to ask ourselves, really, I mean, is the constitution in this instance, or should I say in the African experience or in the Kenyan experience, an instrument of oppression? What is far much more better? You have something, called a piece of paper that you're just laying down there, and your daily life is a grind. Or you have someone who's there, he's not a dictator, He's directing the resources the way they're supposed to. Look at the way he has transformed farming. He has erected a tomato plant, a factory. Today in this country, we have to import ketchup. What a shame. Today we have Article 48 of the Constitution allowing us access to justice. It's in theory. When you tell a woman out there in the village that they have to access online judicial services through an Android phone, which they do not have, and even if they do have an Android phone, it is still dependent on an external force, an external entity called a service provider, Safaricom, Airtel, Telcom, whatever it is. Now, you do not want to abide by the Constitution for what reason? You have courthouses that are not open. They are available. They are being actually funded by the taxpayer. 15 years down the line, have we regressed or progressed? What am I saying? Using that example of Ibrahim Traoré, His Excellency, the President for Burkina Faso, you have to ask yourself, what is it in the Constitution in terms of the presidency in this country that Ibrahim Traoré is doing different than the president is doing here? So is the Constitution serving us as a people? You find killings, which my learned friend is talking about, Mr. Kibe. Would we have imagined 15 years after the promulgation of the Constitution that we'll be having these sort of killings going on? And you ask a question, so where is the failure? Why is someone blinking at the end? Partially, I blame this chronism, which my learned friend is talking about. The occupant of the office of the DPP must have a passion for the Constitution, and they sought to defend the Constitution. Are they defending the Constitution? I give it to the judges. Many of them who are working under extremely difficult conditions, I really respect them highly, but they are under a leadership of the Chief Justice. What can they do? For instance, my learned friends here are bound by practice directions by the Chief Justice. Go online. Hello? That villager out there who wants to access justice under the Constitution, wants their protection of the law under Article 27(1) of the Constitution, is not getting it because of practice directions. Are they law?
Okay.
So I'm saying the institutional lead or the leader owes all of us to uphold the Constitution, which they are not.
Because this document had its own structures designed to ensure that it stands on its own. There are institutions that need to do that, the judiciary, parliament, ESCC, all of them. Yet more and more we are seeing that the same institutions, are treating this document and the text therein as opinion and not law.
Yeah.
Is that the issue?
So you see, I think we cannot run away from these facts stated by my colleagues in terms of the head of an institution will decide and determine the aspect of implementation. I think this is settled. If you are the head of a particular institution and this is what you should do, it is laid down there in the Constitution, and you don't want to implement it, there is basically not much we can do, but you can see protests, you can see riots, because the enabled citizens, enabled by this Constitution, will go back to the streets and try to say, you must implement it. And that's what is happening in our country, because you see, when people go into office, they tend to think that, hawa wanatupiga, these guys are fighting us. But why are they fighting you? Because you are not implementing the Constitution. You really want to go into office and you know, take over procurement, take over, you know, the critical departments and make sure you eat. And that's why Kenyans are actually coming up in appraisal. So, yes, the Constitution has certain weaknesses, but like Kibe mentioned earlier when he started, he said, I mean, how can we even discuss which articles are not, you know, really, you know, strong or are weak, when the people in the name of Parliament have not implemented to the best of their capabilities, even have 50% of the Constitution requirements. Look at the gender rule, for example. It's a whole constitutional provision. Parliament has never been able to enact that. When you see the chapter on integrity and honesty, by the way, what is that? What is honesty? What is integrity? Is it under the Catholic code or under the Muslim? Well, I mean, because, you know, when you just mentioned honesty, what is that? The way Mr. Kenyanjui looks at honesty is probably not the way my colleague here, Kibe, says what is honest.
Allow me. There's an objectivity. There's an objectivity as a people in this country that we hold. And that objectivity.
I agree entirely. That objectivity, by the way, will determine who is in office to interpret it that way. You know, let's say.
So all you're saying, gentlemen, is that this constitution and the implementation of it is still dependent on the individuals who will come run this country.
Yes, but we are also saying...
Yet that is what we sought.
No, but we are also saying...
Remedy.
We are also saying that the people at the helm, if they do not implement it, we can also go to the extent of blaming our citizens if they do not put, you know, the leaders into account, if they do not ensure that the leaders are accountable for what they do not. So we cannot say devolution has failed when we are friends of governors who are looting the counties.
Right.
So it's all about really, yes, leaders, but what are we doing as citizens to implement it?
And now that you mentioned devolution, it is cited as one of the successes of this constitution 15 years on. Yet from the word go, we saw attempts by, or probably people who are still hung on the older constitution. Things like the provincial administration, which is a parallel system from the devolved units. NGCDF, which is the same resources that should be expended by the devolved units, but now still at the national government. These were systemic problems stemming from the fact that many people are reluctant to leave old habits. Yet 15 years on, we still continue with them. Or we would have hoped that probably 5 years on, some of those things would have dropped by the wayside.
Yeah, that is true, and these are good questions on devolution. But before we go very far, there is something I want to agree with Kinyanjui on the issues of Traore. The issue of patriotism is actually very important in a country, particularly expected of a president, and there is a constitutional provision. For example, I believe it's Article 131(2). The president is supposed to defend the constitution, to defend the country's resources, and to ensure that public interest is realized. All this revolves around patriotism. You must love your country. For example, if you genuinely love your country, you cannot have a situation where rice in Mwea and other areas, rice growing areas, is rotting in the stores. Then you get AFA, Agricultural Food Authority, to give licenses to businessmen to import rice duty-free. Remember, rice is imported all the time. So that when you say some rice should come duty-free, it is because there is $1 billion or $2 billion to be made unlawfully. That's an act of lack of patriotism. When you talk about something like the privatization of the Kenya Pipeline Company, the value of that business, together with its asset, is in the estimation of very many people I've spoken to. Something like could be about 1 trillion shillings. But they are valuing it 120 and getting a scheme where you would want to buy Kenya Pipeline after valuing it for only 120 billion. These are scandals. These will not be happening in countries where you have a patriotic president. People like in Malaysia where you have Petronas. I hear Petronas was actually originally given the seed capital by the Kenya Pipeline Company. Petronas gives 30% of the annual revenue in Malaysia. But here in Kenya, you only make 10 billion. It is possible Kenya Pipeline as it is can easily make 50 billion. Kenya Power can make 100 billion. But do they make it? No,
Wakili,
they don't.
But my argument is that this same document was supposed to remedy that same problem, that despite the bad behavior of any person, they would not be successful because there is a constitution.
But remember, a rogue president, and you use that term, a rogue president needs to be impeached. Who was impeached, for example, on the basis of tribalism? It is a person, Rigathi Gachagua, who has never appointed anybody to office. But today, you will see a country in its hypocrisy who says, oh, we got rid of ourselves of the chief tribalist. That chief tribalist, look at the Gazette notices. There is no single appointed person who was ever appointed by Rigathi Gachagua. So that when you see like you have these problems of a rogue presidency, then you must ask yourself, what is the court doing about it? What is Parliament doing about it? Because if those people who are the guardrails of the Constitution, the people who are supposed to do something about it choose to do nothing, then those are the consequences. Let me come back to devolution. The question you ask about devolution is significant in very many ways. In a score of 1 to 10, I don't think I would give devolution more than 4 as a success. Of course, I believe by now I was doing some article yesterday, 3.7 billion has been given to devolved governments. When you go to many areas of Kenya, you see there is some noticeable change that could not have been there if we had a centralized system of government. So to that extent, it is good enough. But in the most important way that you expected devolutions to work, it is yet to work. And this is that apart from getting what we would call seed capital, some money from the National Treasury, the devolved government was supposed to come and mobilize local people in the counties so that all these counties can realize their potential. But what is the story that you see? Even counties can really get ahead, counties like Nakuru with a lot of resources, counties like Nairobi and Kiambu, and counties, of course, like Kajiado. You see a disappointment because when I was seeing statistics the other day, somebody had written a good article. For example, Kiambu is actually bigger than Mauritius, and it has actually more population than Mauritius. But Mauritius, from the standpoint of GDP, is a huge, huge economy. So that you have people, same space, but achieving very little. Okay. So that viewed that way, you would actually be able to see that the promise of devolution, counties like Murang'a are trying, where you say that genuine efforts are being made to try and mobilize the people to achieve some of what devolution was supposed to do. For the bulk of the counties, the situations that you see, they are like employment bureaus and something like expenditure bureaus. You receive money from national government and you use it.
And we come back to the understanding about what the Constitution describes for devolution, because and the level of understanding of what those units should be. I was talking to the COG chairperson, and on that issue of economic viability of counties, it was very straightforward, and he said that was not the intention. The intention was to devolve services, not to make the units economically viable. It talks also to the level of understanding of what this devolution was to be, despite the successes that you talk about.
Yeah. Okay. You see, Kibe brought up a very, very sensitive topic actually about the presidency being rogue, and he did not go to the extent of what it does to the rest of the cronies around him, the people around him, and that's where the really, game is played in terms of destroying the country, because everybody tries to pick up the example from the president. Did he believe in this constitution in the first place? You can read history when there was orange and banana. And would he then implement it fully? Again, you can go back there. But coming back to this question of devolution, Fred, I think most people agree that everything was decentralized, including corruption. Corruption was also decentralized. And money was taken to the counties. Now, everybody was, every single county has been given their portion of blame, so that you don't hide behind the central government to say that we have not been given money, we have not been given authority to spend our money so that we can give our people services. So it is not a positive note to say that corruption has been decentralized, but in reality now, we can be able to see 47 units and how they spend their money. Mm-hmm. So when you cried so hard that the central government is eating up all the money, now you can see what happens at Nyamira. It is a bad example of leadership. People are coming to embarrass themselves in public. You can see what's happening in Nairobi County, for example. Now guys are going to impeach, they want to impeach the governor because people are not satisfied. They are not getting the services that they were promised. So to that extent, you can say, again, we go back to who is at the helm of the institution. You can say that the guys who are managing, the CEOs of the counties, are actually not implementing what is there in the Constitution and in the Act. Mm-hmm. So you can't blame the Constitution per se, as he said earlier, for example. A Constitution, like any document, must have a human agent. And the human agents in our counties are actually failing the Constitution.
All right. Wakili Kinyanjui, your assessment of devolution, even away from the issues of corruption, because fine, that's a bigger problem.
In my view, one of the biggest problems that we have is this saddling of the devolved unit with unnecessary baggage of employees. But you also have, coupled with that, ghost employees, which again goes to what my line friends are talking about, corruption. Because whoever is at the helm stands to derive the benefit financially. And using that same money, they bribe their way. Look at the architecture of the Anti-Corruption Economic Crimes Act. If you look at Section 35, Section 36, there are supposed to be every quarter, every year, a report is supposed to be generated by the EACC. And that report is supposed to be handed over to the Honorable Attorney General. That report in turn is supposed to be tabled before Parliament by the AG. About what? About whoever has been indicted of corruption. So you suddenly hear, oh, a certain governor is being taken to court or is under investigation. Hello? We don't have that basic compliance by that institution. So what happens? In the meanwhile, the devolved unit is looted. The devolved unit is run down completely entirely. What my friend Mr. Kibe is saying about the example of Kiambu in comparison to Madagascar suffices to show you
Mauritius.
Mauritius. Pardon me. It shows you that really these are people whose vision is lacking. What is a vision? And this goes and speaks of the same issue of want of vision in terms of the presidency, parliament, and I don't want to besmirch anybody's name. I don't want to cast anybody in bad light. But how many of these leaders have read that constitution? 15 years down the line today, the government printer has not printed these copies, hard copies, to avail to the citizenry. 15 years down the line. 15 years down the line. That government printer is housed in State House so as to shield everything that is published in the name of the government under the presidency. So you do not have the dissemination of what is contained in that constitution among those individuals. Look at Article 6 of the Constitution. It talks about the devolving of services to all these 47 units. Why is it that I still have to go to Nyayo House in terms of a passport? But when it's politically expedient, you hear, oh, some northeastern people who have been disadvantaged suddenly will get the services there. But Vihiga, on the other hand, in need of the registration of their youth, or Kerugoya, or Mombasa, Mvita, wherever it is, they will not get the same services. So it is in the hands of the authority that is there. Whether it is the governor or the president, you find then there is a leverage that is placed on what that devolved unit can do via parliament. You find these constant wars. Oh, the funds that we need are not sufficient. Oh, the funds that you're supposed to give us actually, they fight all the time. And in the meanwhile, there's a passage of time. Let me go back to Ibrahim Traore. 2 years, he's transformed Burkina Faso. 2 years, he has made his people feel like real Africans there. But what do we have? 15 years down the line, we are looking at a document that is talking of the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. Hello? Did you see them fight for they who were killed in the recent Gen Zs? What do they do except generate a report and it goes to parliament and that's the end? They're supposed to be defending devolved units, the constitution itself, gender issues, and so on and so forth. And you have a commission that every month everybody is paying, our taxes are paying them. And what are they doing for us? So devolution has failed to achieve its intended goal in terms of constitution, in my humble view, because, again, the shenanigans that play in someone's vested interest in entrenching themselves politically, where you find a governor, once they serve the first term, they are looking towards not the growth of the devolved unit, whether elected, re-elected or not, but for re-election. Once re-elected, after the second term, what are they looking for? Higher office, or they want to become a senator. To do what? That's a redundant job that you're giving us because you never yielded any results. But what are they writing on? The political name they have been able to have. And this is what we're having. And Mr. Kibe did rightly point out, we have recycled leaders who have failed. And you have a governor.
And Okili, I hear because we may blame politicians, and they're known for their bad behavior. Yes?
Yes.
Yet we have institutions that were created by the same constitution to defend the sanctity of the constitution. And I'm reading an article here by former Attorney General Githu Muigai, Professor Githu Muigai, and he says the constitution can create institutions, but it cannot legislate political maturity. Aren't we lying to ourselves when we keep looking back at the politicians? We know that they're known for their bad behavior, and they will always fight for their interests. Shouldn't we be looking at these institutions instead and forget about the politicians?
May I finish a point so that you can give the podium to my friends? I was coming to say that what is our failing in that respect? An MP is being elected. At the point of election, when he's now going round to get his votes, he rides on a political party. He does not probably even fathom and understand the first and the last page or what is between the Constitution. What is he going to implement? He doesn't even have a blueprint for that constitutional provision. Same with the president. And here we have a president, in my humble view, all that he wanted was to just acquire and get that seat for his own economic ends, for his own ends, and that was it. It was not about implementing it. So what am I saying in a nutshell? We do not have the benchmark against which, when we're going to an election, this MP, this governor, or this senator, or women rep, we are supposed to tell him, now look, the Constitution gives us halfway through your term, we can get rid of you. It's called a recall clause. And we will go back to the benchmark that you gave us. You told us that halfway through you'll have achieved these. And that's what we should be going knocking every day. You told us to do this, but what do we have today?
Okay.
Oh, look, our manifesto told us to do these, and this is what you're hearing, BETA, better, or whatever, bottom up. We don't have that being implemented at all those levels. And so we have a constitution in paper.
All right. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at beyond the politicians, what happens. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth as long as it is strong and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window.
Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe, today being the 27th of August 2025, 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution. Katiba Day it is. We're taking stock of the Constitution that we have, taking a look at the hits and misses. And listening to my panelists, there seems to be a lot of blame directed at the politicians. But were they the only people who should defend this Constitution? If at all it's been defied and defiled, it's because other institutions have allowed it to happen. Now, which are these institutions we are looking at? Is it the judiciary? Is it these other independent offices or independent commissions? Who is to blame beyond the politicians?
First of all, because I don't want us to trivialize the issue, the most important political positions under our constitutions are actually held by politicians. The president, who is the head of state and head of government under the constitution, is a politician. The speakers are politicians. The people who make laws are elected as politicians. So that because government is a political reality, so you cannot be able to divorce entirely the issue of politicians from a vehicle that is essentially a political vehicle. And in fact, I believe you can remember, I don't know whether you can, but Barack Obama, when he was senator 2006, he came to Kenya, and I believe he was speaking at Taifa Hall. And I remember him saying that the president, if the president of a country succeeds, the country succeeds. If he fails, the country fails. So that failures, the same way they say fish rots from the head, it is the same way that if the president is a danda, the president is corrupt, it is highly unlikely that a country would succeed. When the favorite president of Kinyanjui, when he talks about him and the change that he's been able to do, is that when you are ahead of something, just like even the father at home, if the father is progressive.
He has a favorite president.
I'm saying the Burkina Faso guy. Yeah,
Traore.
Yeah, Traore. You get it. But since he's a man of substance, countries like Korea, countries like Singapore, all these countries, the common denominator of countries that have gotten ahead, even the scenario, Putin could be a dictator of sorts. But again, when you look at what Russia has been able to become under Putin, you also see that it matters the capacity of the individual who is president and what he stands for. For example, Putin with the issue of Russia must be a sovereign country that matters in the world's geopolitics. Sometimes you ask yourself when it comes to countries like Kenya, and Kebaso Morara one day asked the questions very well, that does the presidency mean something bigger than yourself or the governorship when you become one? Are you able to rise to the occasion that you are the president of Kenya, isn't it? Apart from giving you money, giving you the ability to accumulate land all over, and to make deals and to turn yourself into a billionaire, does it connote anything beyond that? And I think that's the point that you are making. Now, all that, whatever else the rest of us do, I see Kinyanjui and my learned colleagues, you see me in court very many times, trying as advocates, the small offices we occupy as advocates, people like Okia Omtata and the doctor from Nakuru, people doing a lot to defend the Constitution. Because the Constitution at the end of the day also needs to be protected and to be defended, protected, in order that it can defend us. When the Gen Z went to this protest, there is a civic responsibility. There is Article 3.2 of the Constitution that requires every citizen of Kenya to stand up, respect, and defend the Constitution. So that the duty, apart from state actors, it is a duty that also belongs to all of us. Your own media, TV47, media is recognized they are recognized under the Constitution. It also depends what kind of media is TV47. Does it make a contribution to ensure that the Kenyan Constitution and order and good practices and ethos are practiced and to advance them? Because if it doesn't, it would be failing. So that the nation, of course, can go very bad in one sense. But also, its citizens and the very many actors, things can go very wrong. Look at the IG of police. You ask us to mention institutions. DPP is a spectacular failure. There is no doubt about that. The IG of police, it says that he is independent, isn't it? And he will be independent and to take charge of the police force. But apart from personal things like the fight over payroll, where you see he is even disobeying orders, where he is concerned personally, is he in charge of the police in any significant sense? What you see from him is a situation whereby they are all meek surrounding CS Murkomen when he is making political statements that are clearly advancing the political cause of one entity. So when you read the Constitution vis-a-vis what is actually being done by such state officials, one can only be able to say that you are letting the country down. The Attorney General, that's the last one. You also see a situation, the Constitution says, Article 156, he is the ultimate custodian of public interest. But over and over again, the main violator of public interest is very often the president or the executive. But in virtually all those instances, the Attorney General comes to court, and I go to those courts every day. They come to court and always takes the position that is clearly against public interest. So those failures, those are not failures on the part of politicians. These are failures, nothing wrong with the Constitution. The Constitution has said, defend public interest. But can you say, this is one occasion when I defended public interest?
But
you can't say.
Kibe, look at the constricted space that a Kenyan citizen occupies. What can the average Kenyan do when they see a chauffeured president? Like now, this is today's newspaper. Allow me, counsel. I don't want to override you. It is saying here, Ruto offers U.S. firm millions. And every month we have to cough up 22 million Kenyan shilling to this company called Strategy LLC.
Public relations.
But for public relations, what do they say? Strategy LLC says, oh, you know, we are so well-versed with the happenings in the White House, and therefore we can help launder your tattered image as the presidency of this country. What can the average Kenyan do about that? Whose responsibility is supposed to be ensuring that this does not happen? The controller of budget, for instance, says, hey, wait a minute. Have you familiarized yourself with Article 222, 222, 223 of the Constitution, Mr. President, and your presidency? You are not supposed to spend a dime, a shilling of Kenyan taxpayers' money without the approval of Parliament. So, has Parliament approved this sort of expenditure? No. The control of budget? No. Where is this money coming from? From a slush fund. This slush fund is in the military budget, where nobody is able to scrutinize or even question or ask any questions. Is Parliament summoning the Felix Kosgei and asking him, where are you going to get this money as a presidency? So the constricted space that the Kenyan citizen occupies is one which is of great shame and pity, because then all you can ask is that, Mama Mia, my goodness, you're just scheming me, taxing me to death and using my money the way you want outside the law.
The legal fraternity comes in there, that the judiciary and the...
But Kibe has said it. Kibe has said it. We go to court every day agitating for the constitutional rights. What does the AG come? You know, we are opposing this application.
Yes.
I think the is fired up. You asked the question, what will others do? I mean, we keep blaming politicians, and I think it has been correctly canvassed, but what can I do in my small way? Now, should we support the government to implement policies, or we should just keep whining? Is supporting a government of the day to implement on the mandate of the Constitution, supporting the government, or rather supporting the head of state or the politicians of the moment? So I think these are some of the issues also we should look at. What can the citizen do, even in the constricted space? The youth have shown that we can hold to account every person in office. And there's a provision for members of parliament to be recalled, by the way. There's a provision for parliament to be dissolved. The problem is impunity, complete impunity by those in power. Why do I say this? I mean, we have told members of parliament, please stop flashing your watches and nice belts and shoes. Then what happens? We have told parliament, please stop accepting corruption. The president has come in and said, no, parliament is corrupt. So citizens are still trying. But I think that, Fred, in the next phase of implementing this constitution, citizens must keep doing what they are doing. This level of impunity we see today definitely will not be there in 2027, 2032 period, because the leaders have seen that now Kenyans understand. And if we try to play their minds, they will go around it. They will be, rioters, and they will push us out of office. By the way, the only reason why the head of state today has not been pushed out of office is because of Raila Odinga. It's because he called Raila Odinga just to quiet the emotions. So yes,
so what can the average Kenyan do?
So I think we keep doing what we are doing. You know, one of the biggest mistakes, humanly speaking, I mean, not even as professionals, just as humans, you can be tired of doing the right thing when you are actually supposed to persist in doing it. We are doing fine as citizens. We are pushing them, and we must keep pushing them.
All right. And as we come to the end, because I can see we have about 10 minutes or so, there's the issue of the Supreme Court as well, which is a creation of this constitution, the main body that interprets the laws and even gives advisories on this. What has their role been, and how would you gauge their performance in ensuring that this constitution is implemented to the letter? As you make your final comment.
Yes, I think talking about the Supreme Court is a mixed bag in the sense that we've had some progressive good decision, and we are talking about 15 years, not necessarily this time. You've had some progressive decisions coming from the Supreme Court. The fact that the constitutional order, at least from a structural point of view, remains intact, they can take some credit for that. But looking at their precise mandate, for example, the exclusive mandate to adjudicate over presidential election petitions, sometimes you get disappointed, particularly for purposes of the last election, where you get a sense that the court has become politicized. You do not believe that, and even going by the language, for example, that they used in the decisions that they made in the Raila Odinga case during that time of Azimio, that they were honest brokers, and they were doing necessarily the right thing for the country. There was an element of open partisanship. Now, a lot more is expected of them. In 2027, we are going to have a massive election in which people have said in advance that kama kura hazitatosha, and it is obviously hazitatosha, we are going to add those votes so that there is a clear determination in advance that has been made that we are going to have challenging elections during that time. The issue of boundaries that you had mentioned earlier, it has not been undertaken. Strictly speaking, we do not have electoral units in Kenya, because the legal order of 2012 that made electoral units, you remember Kenya, Njui, after those many cases that we had, actually has expired. So that there must be some kind of review before you can lawfully hold the next general election.
And the IBC has said they will not do it before the next election.
If IBC, I am not privy to that, but
this is something the Supreme Court pronounced itself on.
Yes.
That they do not have to do the review. No. Let me finish. I'm saying it is mandatory that you must do some review in order to have electoral units in accordance with, I believe, Article 89 of the Constitution. This has not been done. And remember, one of the reactions, and I believe this is a take-home as we discuss this today, one of the reactions of the specter, the possibility that Ruto may not be re-elected, there has been this campaign to try and avoid an elections in 2027. The issue of electoral units and their demarcation is the most direct path that can be able to facilitate the ambition of anybody trying to avoid an election in 2027. You remember the cryptic statement by Moses Kuria that we may not even have an elections in 2027. For as a lawyer, I understand where that one is coming from. You have an IEBC that is very compromised and clearly has slowed down, no budgetary allocation for this critical function that must be concluded by July of 2026, and nothing is happening on that front. So that we are not in a happy place where we can actually be able to say that it is a given there will be an elections in 2027. Finally, it is these same problems of a rogue presidency. The presidency is likely, as the economic challenges worsens in Kenya, you are having a situations whereby the tendency that now, because you see when you fail so much, you will agitate very many people. There will be many protests that you can foresee in the future, when even some of these things are brought to fore. So when it becomes, the crackdown is intensified, there is an element of rogueness that is expected to come. Shall the country hold? This is something that is troublesome, that cannot be taken for granted. But finally, on that, on a hopeful note, is to say this, that Kenya, yes, may be a tyrant, you may have GSU and everybody else, but it is still a fact that if 1 million of us in Nairobi was to stand up and say, we are not going to take this, the GSU would be incapable to save a tyrant from the wishes of the people.
All right. I have 3 minutes each for each one of you to make your final comments. Ideally, your assessment of the Supreme Court's success or otherwise.
Thank you. The Supreme Court so far, I want to concur largely with what Malafreme Kibe has said. The Supreme Court has a problem with perception of its standing as a legal, as the apex judicial entity. You find that it is totally, and this is with tremendous respect to all those judges of the Supreme Court, it is detached from the average Kenyan person. You cannot even have anything in Kiswahili there. They say in their own rules, the Supreme Court rules, that if you want to go and present anything outside the English language, it's so colonized and neo-colonized, you have to inform the registrar 7 days before you appear before them. And then they tell you, which means, of course, that your access to justice under Article 48 to them is premised on them allowing or disallowing your application for addressing them in the Kiswahili language. And yet, we have Article 7 of the Constitution, which says that Kiswahili is a national language. So that's one issue which you find that the Supreme Court is so elitist, aloof and removed from the average Kenyan person that they don't see that it is in any way connected with their daily grind or whatever it is to articulate their issues. And that bears relevance with what we are now getting into, very murky waters of 2027 election. And the Honorable Justice Lenaola, with tremendous respect to him, had pointed out and said that, look, we have this problem of the digital e-filing system. And we had a problem when Malaran Friend and I were in His Excellency Gashagua's case. My own experience was that when we were filing the case last year, the whole system collapsed and we were not able to file. They were able to present their arguments and we were not able to present. And we had a very fundamental case. What am I saying? The Honorable Justice Lenaola said that, look, it's a very stark danger that we are facing. If the executive is able to control and somehow put a blockade on the functioning of that system. It means, therefore, that anybody will find, wishing to challenge the presidential election will find that the 14-day period will not have sufficed. But looking at the contradictions that the Supreme Court has made in terms of its decisions, oh, you need leave here, oh, you don't need leave there, oh, we can hear this case because it's constitutionally, grounded from ab initio. It has created something which is in violation, in my humble view, tremendous respect to them. Article 163.7, which says that whatever the Supreme Court decides, it is now binding on everybody down there. And you find that some decisions of the Supreme Court are not followed by any judicial officer because of that. That is a problem. So, is it time for them to introspect? Yes. Is it time for them probably to voluntarily retire and say that, look, we want a clean slate for you Kenyan people, we are heading into a different dispensation? Yes, I would propose that. With tremendous respect to them. And then you find that Parliament is passing a good package for them. I don't know if it's approval of the Kenyan people, but probably that's my proposition. It would be good just get off. And then you say, I'm not subscribing to this idea that someone should leave before their time. No. I'm just saying that, well, in deference to what we say, there's a higher good of the nation. They should do that.
All right.
Fred, I think I will not dwell much on that, but the truth is there are some decisions that have come from that court which everybody questions. I mean, when you see judges are not confident enough to ignore noise from, whoever, that maybe they're long-term friends, occasionally, writing on Twitter and condemning them. Those are just, self-expression gimmicks. And you see decision like going to the extent of barring one of the, users and advocates, of the High Court and a friend of the court. Then you bar him without really giving him that opportunity to present his case. So I think there are some bad decisions that actually show that the judges are not confident about their mandate. I mean, why would you be so keen about the banters on Twitter and not the constitutional protection you have as a judge of the Supreme Court? But having said that, I think that Kenyans should continue towards 2027 to call to account every single person in an institution. And that's why you see they are quite on the Chief Justice's neck, and they are quite in on Parliament, they are on also the head of state. The head of state has now said that he wants to compensate those who were affected by these riots and all that. I just want to urge him, therefore, to completely drop all cases against those young people who are pushing him to come to this question of saying we wanted to compensate.
That's a beginning point.
They should completely agree that the young people were right. We probably mishandled. And by the way, for your information, Fred, I mean for the information of your viewers, that might actually change the hearts of quite a number of young people if he did that. But to keep them in cells and then say, I'm going to pay your families, is kind of pretentious, yes.
All right, thank you very much, Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo, Wakili Kibe Mungai, and Wakili Harrison Kinyanjui, for your very well-considered opinions on this matter, especially to do with the Constitution. 15 years on, what are the hits and misses? And we'll continue at least for the rest of this week to discuss matters Constitution, today being Katiba Day, the 27th of August, 2025, 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution. This is the same conversation that will continue even after the break. We'll be having a panel of younger Kenyans just to gauge their view of the latitude that they enjoy right now, provided by this same Constitution. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. Good morning.